Hey, welcome back to another Dragonfable video. I haven't posted for over a year. That's simply because over the past years, I don't think there are really any bosses that are very interesting or bosses that can be completed by NDA players. So the bosses released over the past years have complex mechanics and are pretty difficult. So it's pretty much impossible for NDA account to beat them. Also, the gear they drop, I would say only 3 out of the 12 bosses released last year have good drops. The others don't really drop any items that are really good or top tier. And I pretty much already have all the top tier items. So I really don't find all the boss fights worth it. Um, so anyway, I've been getting back to Dragonfable recently because I have a backlog of bosses to clear. Also, I've actually seen a Swanky Raccoon's video. So if you go to this page over here, right, class tier list, I actually referred to this guide hanging by actively. But I used to specifically refer to this page itself in the past. I came back to Dragon Fable in November, early November of 2023, and I actually had no clue on how to play the game because my knowledge of the game was from 12 years back. Right? In fact, I barely remembered anything from 12 years back. So I was completely new, and I had no idea what the situation for all the classes are right now. So I had no idea which classes are good or bad, where I can start with, where I can start by farming my gear. I pretty much have not completed any in challenge at all at that point because in was simply not out 12 years ago. So I have no idea where to start. So I do like search on YouTube, Dragon Faber class tier list, and there are information here and there, but mostly I refer to this one over here because it's more structured in my opinion. Um, and I actually use this guide to pick ninja, the main ninja, because I had no idea which classes to start with. I looked at Ninja's toolkit and I see that's pretty interesting, so I started with Ninja. So this guy right actually provided me my first starting class, and I'm no longer using Ninja as much. I move on to Pirate, but it just shows you how important this guide is to me. And I actually seen like this note over here, I think it's pretty interesting to bring up. So, Ninja and Pirate has been moved from A to A plus because of BPT and all gear innovations. If you click on this, right, it brings you to Swanky Raccoon's video. All right, um, I'll just let it load for a moment here. And actually, never mind. Let's forget about it. I was actually credited um, by suggesting this BPT plus all BPT plus all gear like unconventional build. I use it in one of my Chaos Layer video, in clear video, and at that point of time, right, I actually did not know that this was unconventional because my knowledge of the game was like I did not have a good idea of what player focused their strategy around. I did not know that all gear was the standard. I mean, I know how important the plus all stat is, but I did not know that it was no. I did not know that nobody was using BPD gear, because from my perspective, right, um, a lot of items provide very good BPD stats, and that the massive overhaul to how BPD is calculated, how damage is calculated, and bonus, make me feel like BPD and NPM is such a um, good way to negate damage apart from using all. I completely don't know expect that this wasn't really the norm. So in essence, I was using a very unconventional gear set for a long time that I did not know that was unconventional in the first place. I actually stuck with BBD like just in the earliest phase of the game. As soon as I pick up Ninja, right, I'll start stacking BD. And I didn't really use the auger strategy. I still don't use the auger strategy now. In fact, I don't even have the wings of the everlasting flame or whatever the item is called, like this plus 15 all. If you go into my bank or you go into my inventory here, right, I do not have that plus 15 all wing item. Yeah, so I pretty much am still not using the plus all strategy even now, because all the bosses have some kind of debuff, right? So if you can avoid their attacks, I'd rather avoid it instead of like reducing their damage or what not, because the debuff that they provide is a lot more detrimental to me than the damage it deals most of the time. So I'm still using a DPD and MPF focus strategy. I've moved on a bit more to MPF focus strategy recently because of the Shadow Hunter rework. And Shadow Hunter is actually one of my main classes now, on top of Pirate for my DA account. On my NDA account, I still mainly using I'm occasionally using Shadow Hunter. Shadow Hunter, I think the Revenant Bane, the various Banes is a lot more beneficial um, to its strength as a class. So it's not, strength isn't really accentuated for an NDA player. A Paladin's NDA skill is not sorry, a Paladin DA lock skill isn't really that good. So a Paladin is actually still good for NDA players, even though it got nerfed heavily. Um, let's see. So I'm still using Paladin on NDA account, and I'm not really able to get anywhere with Paladin, unfortunately. I was trying BSW, but I got nerfed, and I feel like it's less useful than Paladin now for NDA accounts. I can't speak for it for DA accounts because I've not been using BSW for my DA account. Alright, still using Pirate and Shadow Hunter. Okay, so um, let's see. Let's get started on video. Today's video topic will be food, and so the first part is just a brief commentary on why I was gone and um, my experience playing Dragonfable. But I'll move on to the main topic for this video now, which is food and weapon special. So I think I'll start with food first because I think I'm already at this Ruby guide, which contains a list of food here. I already have a food page open here, so let's just start with food first. Also, this is going to be an easier topic to cover. Okay, first we'll start with Rotten Hardtack. So this is from the endgame wiki. It contains very good information about the food, concise, good information about food. In fact, about everything. So will be mainly using this as a reference instead of using information on the actual Dragonfable client. All right. So Rotten Hardtack and Seaweed in the past used to be overpowered because they can heal you to max health even when you are with a health debuff. So last time, normally for a player, right, their max health can be up to 3,500. So people usually use the healing item when they are below 500 health. So let's just say that this item in the past used to heal players of 3,000 health. Now they make it so that it heals players 900 health. That's essentially 30%. They nerfed it to 30% of its original value. 70% of the healing has been wiped out. That's actually crazy, in my opinion. They also increased the cooldown from 10 turns to 15 turns. Alright, so that's actually insane. And I think they over nerfed this item a little bit. If they nerf it to 50%, so um, instead of 900, right, they make it so that it heals 1,500. I think this could still be viable. But now they nerf it to 900. And 900 to me is completely outrageous. It's completely outclassed by potions because potions, by stacking minus all and minus health, you can actually heal by 1,800. So the fact that you can only heal 900 from this is actually insane. Half of the potion value is actually insane. So this is like garbage tier for me right now. What's actually more garbage is this coca berry juice here. So it probably provides a heal over time, sorry, for 2 turns. And it heals 270 health for 2 turns per turn. That's actually like insane. That's more insane than this two food over here. This food has been just completely wrecked and is completely useless now for healing. The only use that it has still is that it minus your crit, right? So if you're going against bosses that requires you not crit, like Wrath and um what is that called? The boss that have all the elements combined. I forgot what the boss is called. Let me just quickly go and check what's the name of that boss. Uh, Corrupted 7. Pandora. Okay. Yeah, so if you're fighting Pandora, right? When she uses a rare form, you also want to just clear your crit. So you can actually use this item to clear your crit. But apart from that, right, there are no situations where you are going to be using Coca Berry Juice now. So I have no idea why they nerf. Okay, I had an idea why they nerf this item because this item used to be slightly less useful than Seaweed and Hot Rotten Hardtack because it's still susceptible to. Actually, no. Sorry about that. It actually is on par with Seaweed and Rotten Hardtack. So it was like overpowered, but they nerfed it so that it's even worse than Seaweed now, which is completely ridiculous in my opinion. Seaweed at least gives you a 10 bonus. This thing gives you a debuff for most cases. So and it also heals you for about half the amount that Seaweed heals you. So this item is completely trash now. It's probably the most trash food of every food in the game right now. Instant pierogi is already useless before. I have no idea why they want to nerf it even more. So it's probably on the same level as coca berry juice. Completely worthless. One potion alone already heals you a lot more than the instant pierogi ever does. So yeah, garbage item. It has a 6 turn cooldown. To be fair, the cooldown is pretty low, but the fact that it's so mediocre and mana is not really important makes this absolutely trash. Now let's talk about one of the top 3 food that you can get. Let's talk about one of the top 3 food that you can get, which is the main stat food. Why is this food so good? It's because it has a relatively short cooldown of 11 turns. I would not say that 11 turns is very short. The food that has like 6 turns worth of cooldown, but 11 turns is probably the shorter end um, of cooldown they can get from all the food. Um, it has a fairly short cooldown, and it also gives you 50 main stat, which is a substantial amount for over 30 turns. I think this is what makes the food so good. Usually, food the effects last you for less than 5 turns. Usually, it's like for effects as good as this. Usually, it's only like 3 turns, 4 turns, but this lasts you 30 turns. So this lasts you for the entire duration of the boss fight effectively, and it provides like about 10% more damage. I would say maybe not 10%, like 8% more damage over the entire boss fight, which is why this food is arguably the best food out there. Um, so right now, this is one of the only 3 food that I'll be using for all my boss fights. I'll elaborate on the other 2 later on. Right now, in my opinion, I only think that there are 3 food worth using in fights. All the other foods, right, are so outclassed by these 3 food that they are completely like there's completely no reason to use any other food other than these 3 food over here. Also, pretty much by the time you finish using all these 3 food, you have already racked up so many turns that the boss fight is almost over. Um, so like you'll be on such a high cooldown that the boss fight will be over by the time you consume all these 3 food. So in my opinion, there's no need for you to be considering any other food apart from these 3 foods. So this is actually one of them. Uh, Sometimes you want to use it this right at the start of the fight, but most of the time I'll use it as my second food. I will talk about which food I'll be using first later on. Alright, Sebring bread. I've never actually used this. Let me see what this is. This gives you 25 endurance for 3 turns. That's like garbage. 25 endurance is what? 125 health. And barely any immobility. You're only going to get 2 immobility from that. So you're going to be using this essentially only for the health. And it also gives you 6 turns cooldown. 6 turns is fairly less, sure. But like 125 health is so negligible that it makes this food kind of garbage. It's not as garbage as Cougar Berry Juice in my opinion because of the low cooldown, but it's still not a food that I'll consider ever using. Purple fruit gives you wisdom. It gives you endurance and wisdom. Interesting. 50 endurance and wisdom. In my opinion, wisdom is probably more useless than endurance. So 50 wisdom is not even like worth considering. Uh, so we'll just talk about the 50 endurance. 50 endurance. That's actually not too bad, and it applies it for over 30 turns. So throughout the whole entire boss fight, you get 250 more health. This is actually decent, but unfortunately, it's still outclassed by the 3 foot that we're talking about. But you can certainly use this as your 4th foot. Um, I simply don't think that there are any boss fights out there that will last long enough for you to be able to use this foot, apart from the 3 that I'll be first using. So potentially another foot that I'll be using for extra long boss fights, but probably not. Next will be Zark Kicks. This is gives you 40 luck. So essentially what this means is for crit. Because for every 10 luck you get 1 crit, and this also gives you 2 NPM and 2 BPD. It also has a cooldown of 30 turns. That's actually ridiculous. If this has a cooldown of 6 turns, I think I will consider using this. But the fact that it's 30 turns means that you will not be able to use any other foot after you use this item. So it's complete garbage. Because 40 luck is okay, but it's not that great in the grand scheme of things. And the fact that we lock out of all the foot just by having this very minuscule bonus is not good at all. So this other is garbage. Next will be Zap Kebabs. This gives you bonus plus 100 bonus, a pretty substantial amount. Um, it gives an 11 turns worth of cooldown, which is okay. Unfortunately, bonus is severely outclassed by your pet dragon. Any buffs that provide bonus to you is outclassed by a pet dragon assistant buff. Because your pet dragon alone can give you perpetual bonus, 100 bonus for the entire duration of the fight. As long as you get its charisma to 200, right, you can keep spamming assistance on it, and you'll keep getting the bonus buff. So any food that gives you bonus is not that great. The fact that it only gives you bonus for 2 turns is way too little for this food to be considered good or even viable. So in my opinion, another trash food. Also, since I'm mainly using Pirate, right, Pyro already have a skill to lower the enemy's defenses by 150, which is a lot. And this foot is just severely outclassed by that skill alone. So I will not consider using this foot at all in any situations. A pretty garbage foot. Alright, next will be Zartata. Now, this is pretty much arguably one of the best foot right now. Even among the 3 foot that I'll be mentioning, this is probably one of the top out there. That's because you are playing any class that have a burst rotation. This foot is going to be super useful to you because it gives you 20 boost. 20 boost is a lot and gives you 20 boost over 5 turns. 5 turns is not a lot, but compared to all of the other foot here, right, 5 turns is pretty long lasting, relatively speaking, compared to all of this foot here. So 20 boost is also one of the best effect that you can get out there compared to all of these buffs that all of this food gives you. So I main pirate and I main ninja and I main shadow hunter. All I even main pyromancer, all of which have burst rotations. And weirdly enough, all of their burst phase rather, last for 5 turns. So this food actually synergize very well with the burst phase of the classes that I actually use or actually main. So I almost always use this item first, because I'll be maybe moving on to the burst rotation at turn 6, around turn 6 for most boss fights. So I can't really use this food first. I can't really use this main stat food and then wait for the 11 turn cooldown to be over before using this food. It'll be a bit too slow and I'll be certainly killed by the boss already by that time. So usually I'll start with this food first, and after the cooldown has ran out, then I moved on to this main stat food over here. But this food over here is essentially the reason why I can clear a lot of boss fights out there. This food is so useful. Alright, so good for bursting down bosses. 20 boost, again, I need to reiterate this, is the best stack that you can get, the best buff that you can get of all of this food over here. And By using your burst rotation, right, you can really buff the damage output um and burst down a boss. Without this food, right, a lot of boss fights will become a lot harder or near impossible for me. Okay, next will be, I can't overstate how useful this food is for me. Next will be Fried Zard Legs. It's provide 50 crit for 5 turns. Now, I don't like this crit term because crit is not actually crit percentage. I used to think that this is crit percentage. 50 crit just means 25% crit chance. So why don't you just call like crit chance? This just gives you 25% crit chance instead of 50 crit, because one crit is 0.5 crit chance. So it's pretty misleading for new players in my opinion. So when I first got to Dragonfable, right, I thought crit just means crit chance, but no, they mean the different things. 25% crit chance for 11 turn is okay. Sorry, 5 turns, sorry. 5 turns is like okay, is pretty mediocre. Um, I think it's personally think it's even worse than purple fruit here. I will use purple fruit first before I consider using this item over here. I just don't think this item is that good. Yeah, it is viable. It is certainly not garbage tier, but it's not a top 4 food that I'll be using. Next will be Zard Burger. Okay, this is one of the top 3 food that I've said I will be using. So why this food is so good? Actually, right, I think there's a typo here. It doesn't provide this buff for 5 turns. It provides this for only 3. So somebody needs to change this value on this wiki. I don't think I have the authority or the permission to change it here. But whoever is watching this video should know that this is 3 turns. So even though it's 3 turns, right, it's still 140 BPD. It's not like 30 BPD or something. 140 is a very substantial amount. It's pretty much an amount that is good enough for you to dodge most boss attacks out there. So over 3 turns is also pretty good. Usually this kind of effect, um, the buffs that the food gives you only last for 1 turn. For how good this buff is, it only lasts for 1 turn. This is definitely a lot more useful than 20 um 20 boost, which is why they need to sort of nerf this effective turns to down to 3. Maybe in the past it was 5, but it's 3 now. So they also need to nerf this by giving an absolutely long cooldown. So usually I use this food as my last food item out of the 3, because once you use this food, right, you are pretty much locked out of all the food. So because no boss fight is going to last longer than 31 turns, and like I already used those 2 foods from before. So essentially the boss fight is going to be lasting longer than 51 turns at least, before you consider using other food. So usually boss fights never actually last more than 30 turns. So that's why this food is the last of the 3 food that I'll be using, and that's why I have not used any food other than these 3, because my last food item is this, and I have to wait 31 turns, and usually the boss will be dead or I'll be dead either way. So yeah, I usually use this as my last food item. I really say why this is so good, because this can stack very well with pyromancers, pirates, and ninjas BPD shield. By using this food, you can certainly just avoid all the boss attacks as long as you reduce their crit value. So yeah, a very good food to have. If the boss have a burst rotation, you can actually use this food over here so they can dodge all their attacks for the 3 turns. Okay, next will be this special food over here. Skimation rule, I'm not going to talk about this because this just applies to one specific boss fight. And this boss fight isn't even that hard either. I can pretty much defeat this on my NDA account with no issues at all. Um, Particular pellets. Now, I think this is a food that might be useful if the boss have a very strong DOT. But I don't think right now there's any bosses that has such strong DOT as of yet. Let me think. Yeah, I don't think any bosses have a. I think there's some bosses that have true damage DOTs, maybe you can use this food to counteract those. But like this food requires you to complete like a mini quest or something. Also, yeah, it's a bit too specific for me to consider using it. Not a lot of bosses out there strong DOTs. A lot of bosses DOTs are very negligible, and I just don't see myself using this food as well. So I've already covered this three food here. This is my thoughts about all the food. In my opinion, these three food, I'll just show you where they are so they can find them easily. Alright, you go to this ruby over here. You can only find ruby in book 3, and then you purchase food. And then Zat Tata is over here. This is the food that gives you boost. And then you have your Zat burger. I believe it's burger, right? You have your 3 main stat food over here. Zat Tata and your 3 main stat food. This gives you strength, this gives you dexterity, this gives you int. So I'm using a ninja, so I'll require Raven's Wing. When I'm using Pirate, I'll use Gorilla Fun's Knuckles, and when I'm using Shadow Hunter, I'll be using Big Basilisk. Alright, I believe the food that gives you BPD is called Zap Burger. Yeah, Zap Burger, you can find it here. Alright, so pretty much you only have to care about these 5 buttons over here. All of this food down here are garbage. Okay, so I think that's all for the food section. Next, I'll talk about the weapon special. So for that, I'll actually have to go into my uh, bank here to show the list of gears that I have. And then I'll go on to the weapon sections. Okay. Now let's talk about weapons specials. Okay, so let's talk about on-demand weapon special first. My thoughts on this is that right now they are pretty trash. On-hit specials pretty much outclasses them in every way, and they really need to buff on-demand weapon special. Because when you are using an on-demand weapon special, you are locked out of all on-hit weapon specials for a bunch of turns. And usually it's not a negligible amount of turns. And the weapon effects that on-demand weapon special provide is very mediocre as of now. Some of them are even less powerful than on-hit weapon special, which is absolutely ridiculous because on-hit weapon special is supposed to be worse off to compensate for the fact that they don't need any turns worth of waiting to use. So I'll almost never use any on-demand weapon special. And I will always use on-hit weapon special. For this section, right, I'll only talk about on-hit weapon special. On-click weapon special, I don't think there's a lot of items out there with this. I think I'll skip this section here. There is one thing there's one weapon that I'll need to talk about. Who has a good on-click special. So it's this weapon over here. If you go to the challenges, lessons, sorry, not lessons, ties that bind a thing, for a renewal, and Lance of the Lost Kid, this one over here. It normally gives you 30 bonus, but once you click on this weapon, right, it changes the 30 bonus to 30 crit. This is pretty much the only weapon worth considering for on-click weapons, worth discussing. There are weapons like Exalted Apotheosis, but if you click it, you just change the weapon's nature to evil, so it doesn't really affect much. But for this weapon specifically, you can change it, toggle it between bonus and crit. So this is the only weapon worth discussing. But other than that, I will just skip the on-click section and move on to the on-hit weapon specials, which will pretty much be the only kind of weapon special that we're using. Alright, for boss fights. So let's start with the first one. Let's just ignore all this on-demand here. Let's go to on-hit. Racial triggers. The Arms of Australia is actually a cash item. So you are not going to be able to get this without spending, so we'll just skip that. Dragon Blade, this gives you 15 bonus and 1.15 damage. There's already a weapon that's better than this, which is Dragon Blazer. This is actually free. It deals 1.3 times damage to dragons. Yeah, this is a weapon that I'll be using mainly for free-to-play players. against dragon enemies. For people with a little bit of disease, highly recommend this item over here. It does 1.4 damage to times damage to dragons instead of 1.3 just by using 100 dragon coins, I think. 100 DCs. So I already have this item. Damn it, I wish I have a search bar here. Uh, yeah, Dragon Knight Dagger. So I actually use this for a fight against the um what's that thing called? Drahatir and Dradolas. I forgot what the challenge is called. Inevitable Equilibrium. I use this fight for those dragon bosses. Apart from that, right? Oh, I also use it against the dragons from Ice and Dragons. But apart from those two specific situations, right, I don't recall using this weapon. I don't think there's a lot of dragon enemies out there. I think I used this against Akirov as well. I'm not even sure if Akirov is considered a dragon. Um, Never mind. So yeah, there's not much more to say about this weapon. If you're fighting a dragon boss, which is far and few between, just use this weapon over here. 1.4 times damage is a lot. Okay, next will be the Escalescence weapon. Let's see if I pronounce it correct. Escalescence. I believe this is called Escalescence weapon. It gives 1.3 times damage. I use it in my recent fight against Bertel and Danielle. So the fact I can deal 30% more to Danielle is really good. Sorry, Bertel. Bertel is the elemental spirit. The fact that I can do 30% more damage is really good. So whenever you're fighting elemental, just use this item. Next will be pretty much all of the racial weapons are more or less the same. For the ice weapon special, this is a rare item, so I'm not going to talk about it. No tender is a cash item, so just skip. Joya's Dragon's Slayer weapon, 1.3 times damage to reptilians. I don't really think you have that much reptilian bosses, or at least I don't recall any strong reptilian bosses released recently. So if you're fighting a reptilian boss, use this. But otherwise, I think it's like 600 DC or something. I think it's a little bit too expensive. You can also get this in the Mogulwin event. But I simply don't really care about this item because I've never actually encountered a reptilian boss. Now, Light of Destiny, this item I have it. Uh, is very good for undead bosses. Light of Destiny, as you can see. This I've used this against what's that guy called? The Death Knight. Uh, I've used this against the thing that gives me all the Death Knight gears. The final boss for the 100 room dungeon, the boss at the end is a Death Knight, and you can use this item on him. I forgot his exact name, but yeah, pretty much if I'm fighting an undead boss, just use this item. So this item deals 30% to Goblin Kind, but it's a rare item, so I'm going to skip it as well. Spider Weapon, I've never actually encountered a bug boss. I don't recall any bug boss on the top of my head, so yeah, I think this weapon is pretty like unnecessary as well, unless they come up with a really good bug boss. Vow Refilled Rose Weapon, this I've used quite a bit because there are quite a bit of human bosses in the inn, and this only deals 1.1 time damage, so it is pretty balanced. Usually it's a standard for racial special to deal only 10% more damage. So maybe in the future they'll actually nerf all of these weapons damage in the inn. But for now, this weapon is the only one that deal 1.1 10% more damage only to humans. So if you're fighting a human enemy in the inn, definitely use this as well. Cause 10% damage is pretty much the highest that you can get in the inn. There isn't really a lot of weapon on hit effects out there that gives you a pure 10% damage buff. Usually it's like 5% or other pretty minor debuffs I would say 10% increased damage is actually pretty substantial. So if fighting humans in the end, just use this. I would say that there are maybe one or two debuff weapon special on hit weapon specials that's actually more effective than this one over here. So I'll be going through them later on. Let's see. Okay, I'll skip this one. I have no idea what this is. This just explain this effect for the specific weapon special here. I have no idea what this is saying, and I'll just ignore it. Okay, Light of the Evil Dread. This is pretty garbage. This is basically a weaker version of Lucky Hammer, and Lucky Hammer itself is not really that great. It deals 10% more damage to crit hit modifier. So if the boss is already susceptible to a racial special, just use this your racial special weapon compared to Lucky Hammer. There are somebody that will crit a lot, like a I don't know, like a ninja or like a shadow hunter, then you can use this as well, I guess. But I think there are better choices out there. Because you are not going to be crit 100% of the time. And you have to constantly like swap between weapon specials if you're using this one. I don't use it. I don't let it take up the inventory slot because I don't think I'll use this weapon a lot of the time. It effectively equates to only 5.7% more damage. Or yeah, so it's not that great. Pandora Sight. 5% proc rate only deals 20% more damage for the current hit, which is absolutely garbage. Never use this. Raw Leaf Backup have a plus 200 crit on every 10 consecutive hit. Another garbage item. Uh, so for that specific hit, it will increase your crit by 200. It will not increase your crit by 200 for a bunch of turns. So not even worth considering. Ruby Spike, what is this? 1.1 damage for any weapons for that only increase the damage for the current hit is garbage. This is garbage. Dawn Replica is pretty much a weaker version of Lucky Hammer, so it's garbage as well. Now the Doom Destiny weapon, they all provide like a DOT. Unfortunately, the DOT that they provide is so little, so minor in my opinion, that it is like pretty underpowered. A DOT is definitely one nice, especially for classes who stack dexterity like ninja. You can deal a okay amount of damage with this kind of DOTs. Unfortunately, there are better weapons debuffs out there, on hit debuffs out there, compared to like minuscule amount of damage. So in fact, even I think you will actually deal more damage just with Lucky Hammer compared to this DOT damage. So this one don't really use this. This Doom weapon essentially is the same as the Destiny weapon, just different kind of DOT. All of this 4th of July weapon I think also provides a DOT. Yeah. All these weapons that provide DOT, just skip all of those because they are pretty underpowered. Alright, debuffs. This is the section that is pretty interesting. Now, first will be this amulet weapon. So I actually use it as one of my main weapon specials. I have it in my inventory over here. Dagger and amulet. Why is this so powerful? Because it gives you 7 boost for over 5 turns. For the next 5 turns, and a pretty decent proc rate of 10% instead of the usual 5%. So 7 boost is not a lot, definitely not a lot. It essentially only increase your damage output by 7%, but it's still okay considering the fact that it lasts for 5 turns. So I think it's a pretty neat little effect. Also, because it lasts for 5 turns, right, you can, after this thing proc and you get a boost to yourself, right, you can switch over to another weapon special and apply more buffs to yourself or more debuffs on the enemy. So I think that's pretty neat that it lasts for 5 turns. If this lasts for 3 turns, then I will not use it because 3 turns is a little bit too low. But 5 turns, I think, in my opinion, is good enough. Alright, next will be Ancient Frost Barbaric Weapon. This increases the enemy health by 10. It might be useful in certain situations. I just think it's a little bit too underpowered. If this increases their health by like 40, so 40 is a bit too much maybe for 30, then I think it's more balanced and more viable. But 10 right now, as of now, is just way too little to consider using. Yeah. All bacon weapon inflicts distracted 5, -5 bonus. That is pretty trash. 5 bonus. Bonus is a good stat to actually debuff the enemy with. But 5 is like negligible. The proc rate is only 10%, so isn't really that high either. So pretty garbage weapon special. Next will be this thing over here. This is actually a rare weapon, so I'm not going to consider talking about it. Oh, this inflicts doom for 2 turns, -25% boost. So this reduces your enemy output by 25%. Unfortunately, it only does it for 2 turns. If this does it for like 6 turns or something, then I'll use this. The fact that it does it only for 2 turns and you continue using this weapon on your enemy just makes it not that great. Also, they don't actually tell you the value, the proc rate. So it can be something as low as 5%. So because of that, I will not waste my DC on this item over here. I think there are better debuffs um, out there compared to just 25 boost over 2 turns. And you have to spend a substantial amount of DCs to get this item, I think. I believe it's 150 DCs. So a skip for me as well. Now, Blade of Destiny, I really think they need to buff this item considering that it's a boss drop. Plus 5% damage reduction for 2 turns. It's a little bit too little, don't you think? If this is like 20%, I think it's still okay. But 5% is so negligible. And it's only 20%. The proc rate is only 20% if they attack the light element. Yeah. Yeah, this is pretty garbage. Now, Blinding Light of Destiny, I think this is a weapon that is viable. Mainly it reduces the enemy's MPM and BPT by 10. But that's not really what I'm using this weapon. The main reason I'm using this weapon is for the -10 bonus. And the proc rate is 100% because on the every 7th consecutive hit, you will trigger the effect. So it's a pretty consistent weapon effect to treat weapon debuff. Unfortunately, it's only -10 bonus. Like -10 bonus is if it's like 20 bonus, then I'll be using this weapon a lot more. 10 bonus is just not high enough. And also, there are not really a lot of good light weapons out there, unfortunately. The best light weapon out there is Ultimate Twin Blade of Destiny. But I think this is outshined by a lot of weapons out there, like Assaulted Apotheosis, for example, AEB, Blade of the Golden Kill, and the recently released Chrono Corruptor Khopesh. Where is it? Oh, Chrono Corruptor Khopesh. Yeah. So because of this outclassed by these weapons over here, I almost never use Ultimate Twin Blade or Destiny anymore. So the fact that this requires you to use a light weapon just makes it not that viable for me. But if you're using a light weapon, meaning a light weapon, I think this is definitely a good weapon special to have. Yeah. But once you get your Exalted Apotheosis and all these good weapons, just it's a skip for me. Next will be Size Zero Special Hammer. Um, this is another decent item to have because it reduces the enemy's crit by 20. 20 crit is pretty low, but it does it with 20% proc rate. 20% is pretty much the highest proc rate they can get. So the proc rate is pretty high, and it does inflict the debuff for 3 turns, which is okay. I think this is definitely a viable weapon special to have, considering that a lot of classes out there uses BPD shield instead of MPN shield, like Pirate, Pyromancer, and Ninja. Unfortunately, I think there are better weapons debuff than this. Don't get me wrong, this is definitely like one of the better stats to debuff your enemy with. 20 crit is definitely one of the best stat to debuff your enemy with. Like there's no question about that. But 20 is a little bit too low. So I think if this is something like 40, I'll be using this a lot more often. 20, unfortunately, this is outclassed by some of the other weapon debuffs that I'll be getting to. This one reduces the enemy's NPM and BPD by 50. Unfortunately, I think they did not state here that they also reduce your NPM and BPD. Yeah, sorry, they doesn't require even reduce their BPD, reduce their NPM only. And it also inflicts hard pull on yourself. So I think this weapon is like absolutely garbage. Why would you debuff yourself as well? Also, Pirate they have a skill that debuff the enemy NPM and BPD by 150, which severely outclasses this weapon special. So absolutely garbage weapon special. Now, Lance of Auto. This is one of the most useful. Okay, I would not say most useful because bonus is definitely like a very overrated stat. Um, it increases your bonus by 30, which is a substantial amount if you're using a stone element weapon. But unfortunately, you are not always going guaranteed to be using a stone weapon. Lance of Author is a strong weapon, but it's not the strongest weapon out there. As I mentioned before, Chrono Corrupted Comash, AEB, even Ultimate Twin Blade of Destiny, I think is stronger than Lance of Author. So the fact that you have to lock to a stone element, and the fact that bonus is really outclassed by the assistant skill for your pet dragon, just makes this weapon special. Like pretty mediocre. I would say it's on par with Sizeo Special Hammer in terms of usefulness. But unless you are fighting a boss that requires you to use both the assistant from your pet's dragon and also like bonus from elsewhere, unless that situation occurs, right, I'm pretty much never going to be using this weapon special. Next will be Patriot Fury. This is one of the most useful like weapon special out there. In fact, I've used it in my recent boss fight against the newest boss, the Voyage bosses. So why this is so good? It reduces their boss bonus by 30. So if you want to reduce the enemy's bonus, right, this is the amount that you should reduce it by. 30 bonus is a substantial amount. Why reducing bonus for the enemy is so good? It's because the enemy has to roll a BPD check and an MPN check against you. It's not just like one roll, it's both rolls have to pass in order for them to hit you. So by lowering their bonus, right, you can highly decrease the chances of them hitting you. Unfortunately, this only applies the effect for 2 turns. If they increase the duration of this, I think this weapon will be a little bit too overpowered. And also the proc rate of this is only amazingly 5%. But I think it's pretty balanced. Do I think this is the top tier weapon special? I think it is not. I think this is a good weapon special, but it's not top tier, unfortunately. Just because the proc rate is ridiculously low, it's only 5%. And the fact that it only lasts for 2 turns means that you have to keep um, being locked to this weapon because if you want to keep applying this effect to the enemy. So yeah, I think this weapon is good weapon special, but not top tier. If you are using a class that is highly reliant on dodge like pirate, ninja, definitely go for this. I mean, you can consider using this weapon for, but for the other classes out there that is not reliant on dodging the enemy, or just like a pyromancer, instead of dodging the enemy, you should like face tank the enemy hits. Then definitely don't use this weapon. Next will be Side of the Doom. No idea what this is. It gives you a bonus, 18 bonus. So it's a underpowered version of Lance of Water, which makes this garbage. Glyph of Theodore Piece. Now this is in fact the strongest weapon special we have in the entire game. And it's boosted by the recent release of this weapon over here, Chrono Corrupted Cropash. So this debuffs the enemy for 3 turns. Alright, 3 turns. You can also use this in tandem with Racial Weapon. So I actually does this in my fight against Daniel Battelle, where I actually toggle between this and the Racial Weapon special. So once I inflict the debuff, right, I immediately switch over to the weapon special, a Racial Weapon special, And then once the debuffs get to 1 turn remaining, then I switch back to this weapon special over here and reapply the effect on the enemy. So why this is so good is increase the damage from a pet dragon as well, on top of the damage dealt by you if you're using an ice weapon. I would highly recommend you to use this weapon over here though instead of a regular ice weapon, because this is pretty much one of the top tier item. Not one of the this is the top tier item to have. I would rate it even higher than Exalted Apotheosis over here, or maybe at least on the same level of Exalted Apotheosis. Just for the one stat that if you 15 BBD, 5 MPM. The main thing about it is the BBD. You can stack this with pirates and ninjas and pyromancers BPD shield, so it's like super useful. Um, yeah, and it also provides you a decent amount of damage. 97 average damage is okay. It's a bit lower than the Exalted Apotheosis, sure. So maybe you want to switch over to Apotheosis if you are doing your burst rotation. But otherwise, for all the other turns, just use this weapon over here. Also, with this weapon, if you have this weapon special already applied to your enemy, right, there's no reason for you to use our Exalted Apotheosis over this Chrono Corruptor Kobash over here. So the good thing about this weapon, again, is that it gives you very high BPD. So it bolsters your defenses while also allowing you to deal more damage to the enemy because you already have a metal debuff on the enemy. Yeah. This also have a very high proc rate, the highest proc rate you can get of 20%. So is the top tier weapon to have right now, racial weapon to have right now. Sorry, not a racial, non-racial weapon special to have right now. I use this in almost all of my boss fights. And I pretty much do not require any other weapon specials apart from this one over here and some of the other racial weapon specials. Next will be high tech Tactarian cover. I actually have it in one of my weapons. I think I put it in the bank. Where do I have it? I think I have this on my NDA account instead of my DA account. Oh wait, no, I have it here. It I think the reason why I have this is because of the weapon stats. It gives you 12 metal, 12 water, 12 nature. So this can be better against bosses which have metal and water nature attacks than your exalted apotheosis. Highly doubt that, but um, there might be situations later on where you have to stack the resistance. So that's why I use this weapon. That's why I have this weapon in my inventory. I'm not really using it for a special. I think the special is okay. It reduces the enemy all by 3. It gives them 10 boost, but um I think the trade-off is worth it. 10 boost is not that much. -3 all is okay. I think this weapon is a little bit too underpowered. The proc rate is pretty nice. At 20% is pretty nice, but unfortunately, proc rate is 60% if the enemy attack with the LNG element. So if you are using an AEB, right, this is very good. You pretty much have to use AEB if you are using this weapon special. Will you give your enemy 10 boost just for -3 all though? I'm not really sure about that. So I think this weapon is okay. It's viable, but it's not good, and neither is it top tier. I think it is actually worse off than Size Zero Spare Hammer or Lance of Water. So yeah, I will not really use this weapon at all. Not because it's not good. It's okay. It's just because it is too underpowered compared to some others out there. Eyesight, I think this is already overshadowed by the the other one, the Glyph Eternal Peace, so I'm not going to talk about that. I think the rest of it. Okay, let's talk about the Blade of Awe and all these weapons first. Blade of Awe, I think, is still okay. It recovers your HP and MP by 4%. Uh, Unfortunately, the proc rate is only 5%. All proc rates are 5%. So I think this weapon in the past, before all of this great on-hit special came out, is decent, but now it's just outclassed by a lot of on-hit specials out there. So I think this is not that great anymore. I've never used this ever since last year. I have no idea what all these fossil weapons are. heal the weapon for 5%. So it's pretty much like a twilly staff, I guess. Twilly staff. So yeah, I'll rate these two weapons at the same tier. Pretty much all recover your HP. Oh wait, no, this that is not a heal over time. This is a heal over time. So twilly staff is going to be useful for healing. I think this is still a viable weapon, special, but it's not good anymore. In the past, it used to be good, but it's just outclassed by a lot of weapon specials out there. I think, personally, this is on the same level as Lancer Alter and Sun Zero Spare Hammer. It is viable, but it's not good. Quad Staff is kind of useless as well. Restores the player's MP. It is a fixed amount, unlike the unlike Warwick's Gift over here. Actually, no. You know what? This is also another fixed amount. So if you have high MP, right, go for Warwick's Gift. If you have a low MP amount, go for the Quad Staff. Unfortunately, MP, you don't really need your MP to be healed that much. Also, you need to remember, keep in mind that all the proc rates of these weapons are 5%, which is minuscule. So if there's a weapon special with a proc rate of 20% out there, I'll definitely be using them over proc rates of 5%. I think that marks the end of the weapon on hit specials discussion. So in essence, use uh Life of Eternal Peace and racial special weapon. Special mention to Zero Spare Hammer. And Dagger of the Amulet. I think Patriot Fury and Dagger of the Amulet are pretty good to have, in my opinion. Followed by your racial special weapon, and then your Life of Eternal Peace, of course. And then after this weapon specials, then you can consider using Zero Spare Hammer and Knights of Water for certain cases, and even twilly stuff. But other than that, right, I don't think all the other weapon special you need to consider them. You are only really going to be toggling between 3 weapon special at most in your normal infights. So for me, a racial weapon, Life of Eternal Peace, Patriot Fury, and Dagger of the Amulet are enough for me, pretty much for all the boss fights. I'm never going to be using more weapon specials other than these 4 weapons over here. So I'll keep all my racial weapons in the bank because I don't want to fill my inventory up with um unnecessary racial specials. But if there's a boss with racial special applicable, then I'll use that as well. Usually I'll just use toggle between Dagger and Amulet and play for Eternal Peace. Sometimes I'll use Patriot Fury. Personally, I like Dagger the Amulet because of its more consistent, higher consistency compared to Patriot Fury. Again, this procs 10% of the time, this only proc 5% of the time, which is a little bit too low for my liking. So I think that sums up my thoughts on food and weapon special. Leave any comments down below if you agree with me or disagree with me. I really think this is going to be very useful for new players out there um, that are going to be doing boss fights. When I actually start doing in fights, right? Just another interesting thing to note. When I start doing boss fights, I completely don't know that you can slot weapon specials. I actually did all my early boss fights right, without any food and without any weapon special. And I was like thinking, how is this like achievable? Right? I was like having a lot of issues back then, even with simple bosses like even some of the Exaltia bosses, I spent quite a bit of time on them. But after I actually got to know food and got to know weapon specials, right, I can all the early boss fights became a breeze for me, and I even clear some of the newer boss fights. And now I've completed all the boss fights just with all my food and all the visual specials, weapon specials. So all the regular on hit weapon specials. So yeah, definitely a very good two bunch of things to take note of before you actually start your in fights. I think that marks the end of this video. The next video will be on gears and also stats. So just going to be a sneak peek of what I'm going to talk about in the next video. I'm going to talk about how you can distribute some of your stats here. So if you go to this surrender, surrender here, I like their names. You can actually change your stats here, modify your stats here. I'm going to reset my stat here. I'm going to show you how I distribute all my stats in the next episode. This is going to be very useful. I'm also going to do a discussion for all the other stats, and then follow up with um how I actually get all my gear sets. So right now my um default build is this build over here. Chrono Corrupted Cropash. That's actually a mouthful to say. Basically, Wonder Defender DM Ring. All of this you can already see from here. But how do I actually arrive at the conclusion that these gears are actually the best in class? How did I did not actually got this gear from other people's recommendation. I got this gear myself. The game has like 300, 400. I don't know, not definitely not 300, 500. They have thousands, even tens of thousands of gears. All right, how did I arrive at the conclusion that these two gears over here are best in class? And how did I get all of these other gears here? How did I like know that some of these gears are best for what kind of situations out there? Because it's going to be very difficult for a player without access to any kind of resources to know that this gear over here is going to be very useful or is the best in class or something, right? There has to be a resource that you'll be referring to or method. So I'm going to talk about those next episode. Very useful for newer player and older player alike. So see you guys then. I think I'll end this episode here. Leave any comments down in the comment section below if you have any questions. I will answer them immediately. Alright, bye for now.